In this section, we'll look at the famous Scopes trial. As I've mentioned, not everybody welcomed the dynamism of the 1920s economy. Some people thought the world was going in the bad direction. And a number of Protestant faiths, including Baptist and some Methodist in the South, reacted to the new ways of living by increasingly stressing a literal interpretation of the Bible. The Bible to them was not open to interpretation. It meant exactly what it said. There was nothing metaphor, no analogies. It meant exactly what it said. And these people were known as fundamentalists. Fundamentalists had been around for some time. You think of the traveling revivalist in the South. But in the 1920s, they were no longer willing to simply practice their faith in privately. They now saw it as sort of an imperative to battle modernism by bringing the coercive power to the state to sort of ratify their own beliefs. When you see everything changing, people can feel unmoored. They can't order their lives, and so it's, in a way, fundamentalism is a natural reaction to a period of tremendous change. But in any event, this growing fundamentalism split many American Protestant faiths. On one side, some sought to adapt the teaching to the new urban world and advancements in science, technology, and philosophy. They tended to be middle class, urban, educated, and a little more prominent probably in the North. On the other side, you see people who've sought to enforce the beliefs that are predominant in the past. They didn't like anything modern cities, modern science, and they tend to be a little more southern or western, a little less well off, and a little less well educated. Christian fundamentalists soon focused on the new sciences like psychology and anthropology as deviation from God's Word. And in some southern states, legislators began to pass laws restricting what could be taught. That was the case in Tennessee against the teaching of evolution. First articulated by Charles Darwin in the 1800s, evolution revolved around natural selection, survival of the fittest. And, it was a theory when Darwin proposed it, but by the 1920s, the archaeological evidence and advances in science were better chronology dating and so forth, had led to a more complete description of man's biological evolution. And you begin to see it becoming accepted in science. And so it's beginning to be taught in the science in high schools. And in Tennessee, the legislature passed a law saying that you cannot teach Darwin's natural selection. In the small town of Dayton, the city leaders realized that the Tennessee law offered them opportunity. If they could get someone to teach evolution, then there'd be a big trial and a lot of publicity to their city, and it would be an economic boom. So they went looking for someone to teach evolution. And they found it in a 25-year-old science teacher named John Scopes. He agreed to teach it, knowing full well that it would lead to quite a controversy. The trial in July 1925 became famously known as the Scopes trial, and many people were attracted to it because they thought that it was really going to be about whether evolution or creationism created man, as though a trial could ever solve that. But you're going to see a lot of cartoonists talking about it as the monkey trial. As the city elders anticipated, the trial did bring tremendous amount of publicity. It brought radio coverage. Crowds would meet every day on Dayton's town square. People were selling food. It was quite the show. Not surprisingly, it attracted some heavy hitters in the legal profession. The American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU, saw the Tennessee law as a violation of church and state, and so they welcomed John Scopes teaching it as a mechanism to sort of force the issue in the courts, to block it in the courts. And they convinced the the great lawyer Clarence Darrow to defend Scopes. And prosecuting Scopes for the state of Tennessee was none other than the former presidential candidate, William Jennings Bryan. So you see the big famous trial bringing some big famous people. From the very beginning of the trial, things were controversial. The trial began with a prayer, and the judge had a Bible, and there were charges left and right. And the judge ruled that the testimony from scientists would not be part of the trial. And so it appeared that William Jennings Bryan had the upper hand. In the end, however, it was Darrow that probably proved the superior lawyer. Unable to use scientific evidence, the judge had ruled that it was about whether Scopes had violated the law, and that wasn't germane. What Darrow did was he sort of made it about the Bible instead. And William Jennings Bryan was referring to the Bible, and Darrow said, well, you've got to be an expert to have the court accept this. And anyway, the Darrow recognized Bryan as an expert. And as an expert can be cross-examined. So you get the odd thing of the defense attorney cross-examining the prosecuting attorney on the stand. And what ended up happening was that Bryan ended up looking kind of foolish. He admitted on the stand that he was looking for absolute standards which Americans could follow, but then Darrow got him to admit that the Bible itself can be interpreted in many different ways. Of course, the trial was about whether Scopes had violated the Tennessee law, and it was pretty obvious that he had, and he even admitted it. So he was fined $100, which the ACLU paid. It was okay for Darrow and the ACLU because they wanted to appeal and get more publicity and push it in a higher court. The case was later ultimately dismissed on a technicality. The real impact of the trial became a little bit more obvious later on. Its real importance. The trial arguably discredited creationism in the eyes of many of the public. Evolutionary theory seemed to be becoming increasingly dominant, and any type of laws that were restricting the teaching of evolution sort of faded in the wake of the Scopes trial. This includes a section on the Scopes trial.